many of my teeth down here, and I can't smile much.
I think it's a pretty picture, especially with the pink on the side of your picture. It's very nice, the pink.
Right.
They put pink on both sides, which is really pretty. And that's one big one.
Well, I got 15 cards today.
15 cards today.
And I'd already had several, so I don't know how many I have altogether, but I think I'll count them, and I'd just like to know.
Yeah. Hello, Uncle Bill. We're so glad you can participate in Aunt Ethel's birthday celebration. Do you want to say happy birthday, Ethel?
Go ahead.
Okay, happy birthday, Ethel. Your turn. Say happy birthday, Ethel.
My turn.
Your turn.
Okay, happy birthday, Ethel.
Yes. Anything else you would like to tell her?
Well, we're glad to see you home.
That's just beautiful. It's so good to see you. You look so good. Look at that. Oh my goodness.
He has the alfalfa.
Any words of wisdom?
Yeah, give me something to eat. I'm hungry.
How about ice cream later? How about ice cream?
I guess that'll do.
Okay, well, Aunt Ethel and the whole family loves you, and we thank you for participating in Aunt Ethel's celebration today. Say goodbye.
Good night.
One,
I guess I'll get it.
Happy
now.
birthday.
I'm not sure what it-
Ethel.
Ethel. Yes, thank you, Aunt Grace. Yeah, we're making a movie so we can share it with people all over the United States.
Grace.
Yeah, so happy 100th birthday party from Tuesday.
Grace
Flowers.
Grace wants
We'll
some
find another
pictures
table for
taken
some
for
more.
her family.
Yeah.
Elaine
This treat.
and
It's cookies.
Okay, then Doris and Marlene are in charge of the table.
Hello there.
Yeah. Is it you have the guest?
How are you?
Right down. That's right there like that.
That's terrific. Happy birthday, Aunt Ethel. Happy birthday.
Say Gary, white or chocolate?
Oh, I better have fire.
I want I'll do the chocolate.
The rest of her on January, February, March.
No, I have
Okay, very good, everybody.
share. We don't all have to take
It's a
crowd of
Okay, we got a video here. We're gonna be making a movie to put on YouTube, so let's all sing happy birthday, okay? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear cards. There are 50 cards on this sofa, exactly 50. And on the other couch, we have 45. And here is from the Missouri House of Representatives. May this milestone birthday bring a smile to your face, happiness to your heart, and many blessings to your life. I hope you have a wonderful and joyful year. It is my distinct honor to wish you a happy 100th birthday. Diane.
For coming. I wanted to let everybody know I appreciate their coming and appreciate the cards and the cakes. And I still want to know what it means to be 100 years old. And I don't know how many will reach that, but you'd probably be like me. You won't think about it till it's too late, and you're there. And what happened, and nobody knows what'll be tomorrow. But yesterday's gone, today's here, and tomorrow is to come. So we don't know what's in store for us. And it's probably a good thing we don't, because we'd worry about it.
Yes.
But so, goodbye, and I'll see you next time. Dad, he was gone. He's buried.
We have 80 people who remembered to sign the book, so you probably had over 100 people.
80.
80 and 95 cards you've received.
95.
Yeah.
95 people signed my book.
Yeah, no,
So
80.
80 people
Yep.
signed my book, but I knew some of them.
What would she say?
What would she say? Children, always do the best you can. That's what my mother would say.
Isn't that amazing? Look at all those. 95 cards,
If
yes?
we would fail to tell my mother anything, Freddie'd bother, she'd say, children, don't you trust me? And it made us so ashamed we would never keep anything from her again.
So tell us a little bit about what the day meant to you.
What
Tell us a little bit about what the day meant to you today.
what the day meant to
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
Well, the most blessed thing, Tuesday on my real birthday, was when Randy came by to see me. And I could just hear him, it rang in my ears, Mom, can you come up? Or Mom, can you do this or that? And when he'd say, Mom, it just thrilled my soul. And Donna was so good to me. And I always said she was my only daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And he depended on her just about like Mayfield depended on me.
Yes. What did
And
you...
when my brother Jesse brought us to Florida, and Randy didn't want us to ride a plane, he said, no, I don't want Dad to get on the plane, said he'll pull that eye loose. And I said, well, it shouldn't, but so my brother Jesse said, we'll rent a van and all come together, Grace and Bonnie, and Mayfield and me, and Evelyn, and so Richard didn't want Grace to come. So Jesse said, well, we'll just drive a car. Do you want to take yours or mine? And he had his fixed with a board because he had to have stretch his feet out. And so we took Jesse's car. And on the way I got sick. I had that inner problem. I got sick and I had to get in the bed at Molly's and I wasn't able to go to Mildred's funeral. But I went to the visitation and then I had to just go to bed because I couldn't do anything.
You had a lot of people here today.
It surely was. And so many of them I knew, but there's a few of them I had to ask who they were. And the owner of this place, her mother was here. She didn't think I know her. I knew her.
You remembered? You remembered?
Yeah, Mary's mother. And she didn't think I know her. And I said, Louise, I know you. And I said, I remember you and your sister at church. And I did. And Mary's folks went to school to me, but Mary never got in my room. But she was 5 years old, and she would cry for her sister. And so Mayfield would go down, and she'd say, Nay, nay. Her sister was named Naya. And so he'd say, you want to come with me up to my office and stay? And she would. And he'd get her up there and he'd give her a coloring book or something. And she would, that would satisfy her. And he'd say, I'm going to have to go and take care of some business for school. Would you care to stay in your room till I get back? Oh, yes, she could do that. So he'd take her to her room and then that would be, she'd be fixed.
Wow.
And he did more than one like that.
What advice do you have if someone asked you, how do you live to 100 years old? What advice would you have?
For what?
To live to 100. What advice do you have?
Well, I guess just follow the Lord. Just follow the Lord. I don't. My mother always said, do the best you can, and I think the Lord has a job, has a place for everybody. So I would advise anybody to be a follower of the Lord. But there's so many that I have associations with, just with church and school and politics, and one time I don't know if I told you, one time at prayer meeting, they got to talking about politics, and Mayfield said, I told Ethel if she'd be a Republican, I'd be a Baptist. And they never did forget that. And I had a doctor. One time it was Memorial Day, and I was going to take some flowers to the Hazel Green Cemetery as I went to church, and I was by myself. I don't know if Mayfield was sick in a hospital or what, but I was by myself, and I hung my toe on something and fell, and I broke my wrist.
Oh.
And I had an ice pack in the house I'd had on my foot. I went in there and got that ice pack and put on my wrist and got in the car and drove myself to the hospital. And they couldn't believe it. And one of my cousins was working there. She was here tonight. And she remembered me. And they thought that was something grand, but I didn't think anything about it. I just had to do it.
There were a lot of people here today.
Yeah, there were a lot of people here today.
The room
I
was...
didn't know how many'd be here, but sometimes I'd say, well, I don't believe I know your name. And they'd tell me, and I'd remember. But I said, well, when you're 100 or when you're 99, you do forget a few things.
But you do very well, very well.
But I told you, Bonnie would find a pretty blouse or pullover or something, she'd have told me and tell me that I found a pretty blouse I think Flora would like. I said, well, go get it and I'll pay my...
Hold on. How many cards did you get today, Aunt Ethel? How many cards? How many cards did you get?
15. 15 today.
15 today.
Today.
Wow. And you got one from Marcia?
I guess I got one from Marcia. I was so glad to hear from her. You know, I brought Randy home from the children's home in Marcia's dress when she is 1 year old.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't know I was going to get Randy, so I didn't have any clothes for him. And Marcia was having her first birthday, and Bonnie got one of her dresses, and we put it on Randy and brought him out to the house. And we sat up all night and watched him. We wanted to be sure nothing happened. All they gave me was a blanket and a bottle of formula at the children's home.
They didn't give you an instruction booklet?
And they didn't give me anything else. I had to, well, Bonnie had things I could use because she had adopted Marcia, and then she got Marcia and her brother jeans or anything, he'd go dressed. And so the principal would say to him, where did you get that shirt? Mayfield said, I don't know, Ethel got it for me. And one day he said, you have it too easy.
Because he married the right woman.
And, well, I had to do the driving because of Mayfield's vision. And so I'd do the driving, and if he needed clothes, I'd usually order them from J.C. Penney. And the principal said, you have it too easy.
And how did you meet Mayfield?
But
And Ethel, some people, we're going to put a video together.
huh?
We're putting a video together to send to people who can't come tomorrow.
Oh, is that
So, yeah, so I have a couple questions for you if you can just share. So if you could just talk about how you met Mayfield.
Oh, well, I just don't remember anything, only I know Grace had seen him once, and I don't know how come him to select me, but all of his folks say, well, I'm glad that Mayfield chose you, and I don't know. And
Did you go out for a long time before you got married? Did you go out? Did you date for a long time before you got married?
well, I guess quite a little while, because we hadn't really planned to get married. It was Christmas Day, and he said, well, I guess this would be a good day to get married. And we went down to Waynesville. We fooled everybody. They thought we'd get our license at Lebanon, you know. And we went to Waynesville, and the clerk there that got the license for us was a good friend of Mayfield's father, and he was also a good friend of my family. And so he said, well, I'll just put this under all these other papers and put them back, and nobody will see them. So nobody could find out anything, you know. And there was nothing at Lebanon because we didn't have anything at Lebanon.
And you were telling me about the story when you were young at your parents' house. The other children were at school. About the fire. Can you tell us a little bit about the fire?
Oh, well, I was 5 years old, and I made up my mother's bed, and the best I could. And so she was in the kitchen working, and I went to the kitchen, and I said, Mama, come and see how good I made up your bed. I wanted her to brag on me, I guess. So she did, and she heard a noise in the front part of the house, and she went to the door. There was a door that separated the front and the back, and it was closed. And she went to that door and opened it, and that whole side of the house was on fire. And so she didn't think to close the door. She should have closed it. But she ran to the telephone, and she made what we called, everybody called a general ring. And it was so many longs, and that was always a sign that somebody needed help, you know. So people answered, and she just said, Joe Elam's house is on fire, come and help me. And so we didn't have closets. She just had nails on the wall and had the clothes hung up there above the head of the bed. And so when she heard that fire, she just went in there, just sweeping all she could get like that, and put it on a feather bed on the bed, and drug it outside, and that's all we got out. And every one of us, it was in January, and every one of us had new winter clothes, coats, and we wouldn't wear our good clothes to school. They all burned up, and there we were at school with our old clothes. But people were so good to us, they gave us clothes. And I'll never forget the girl that gave me clothes. Her name was Harrison. And I guess she was about my size, and she gave me clothes just herself. And I guess just different ones helped different people.
Wow. And what about
my brother Jesse? You know, he was younger than me, and he was, when that happened, it scared him, and he ran off to the neighbors. An old lady, a widow, that lived in a house on the way to where Liz lives now. And he went there and he said, Miss Payne, can you come and help my mama? The house is burning. And of course she couldn't do anything. But nobody could find him, and they was afraid he was in the fire, you know. But the neighbors found out he was there. And so that was a big relief. And then, of course, that was the first house there, and then the next house blew away, and then they built the third house on that same foundation. But that house that blew away, it just went like that.
Where were you?
And they couldn't get, my father and my mother and my brother all started from the dining room to the kitchen. They just got to where the doors met, and everybody thought that the structure up there held that up off of them probably. But it was just as well that they didn't get to the cellar, because it took the roof off the cellar.
Oh, so what happened to your mom and dad?
And so my mom and my brother was just, they just, when they came to, they just were out in the yard, and my father was laying on the ground with his feet on his back, with his feet up on the porch. And the boy that worked for us, the hard hand, he was out in the field east of the house with one shoe gone, and he was on the ground holding to a sprout. I guess he had learned that you ought to get down low and hold to something. And I was teaching school then, so I was not at home.
Oh, okay. So how did you? When did you first?
Mayfield was in school at Lebanon, and he was almost through high school. He heard about the storm, and so he came by sleeper because I was staying with the Willards, and he came by sleeper and asked me if I'd like to go down there, and I said yes, I would. So he took me down there, and when we drove up, I saw my mother with her arm in they'd taken a baby diaper and fixed a sling for her to put in her arm. And I was crying, and she said, "Young'un, how can you cry? We're all alive."
Mm. What did you first see when you came home when it was What did it look like when you came home and you saw it blown over the house when you visited?
After that, well, they lived in the granary where the wheat was stored. They lived there for a while because they didn't have anywhere to stay, and there was no building except that granary, and somebody helped them sack up that wheat, and they just stayed in that. I don't remember how long it was before we got. I think the neighbors came and helped get something up right away.
Wow.
But my mother said she couldn't sleep for days and days and months because every time she closed her eyes, she could just see that smoke, that storm. She said it looked just like real black train smoke. Mm. And we'd never heard of a tornado then. We didn't expect anything like that. But after that, there was times, that you needed to be aware of that and take precaution, take shelter, have somewhere for a shelter.
What classes did you teach when you were in?
I taught all the. 1 year you would teach the 7th grade, and the next year, then everybody would take the 7th and the 8th. Then the next year you'd teach the 8th, and then I taught all from the 1st grade up. But you didn't have kindergarten then. But sometimes the students would go to school 5 years old, but everybody would help them, and the teacher would help them. And if it was an extra a bright little boy or girl, they'd get along good anyway.
Did you teach? You taught all of the classes, not just English or math?
I taught all of them, and we had a recitation seats. They called it the seats up in the front of the schoolhouse, and when you got ready to have a class, you'd call for that class, and the kids in that class would come up and sit in that seat, and they'd take turns reading or whatever their problem was, or whatever their mission was, anyway, what they were supposed to do. And when they had arithmetic, they'd go to the board. We had chalk and an eraser, but we didn't have any colored chalk then. I never heard of colored chalk, but I remember when your grandma was teaching in New York, she said that she had that she was in that girls' school once, and she said that they didn't have the basics. They didn't know the basics at all, and they couldn't tell a subject from a predicate. And I loved English, and she said that she got colored chalk, and and she would diagram a sentence, and she'd draw a line, and she'd put the subject here. Then she'd take a green chalk and draw a line down and separate the subject from the predicate. And I loved English, and I learned how to diagram a sentence. And when I taught school at Waynesville, the books didn't have, the textbooks didn't have diagramming. They didn't do that. But we all wanted to do that, so all the 6th grade teachers decided they'd do that. So I'd get a note from one of the teachers, and it would say, diagram this sentence for me. I loved English, and so many, when I'd work a crossword puzzle, I just loved to work those crossword puzzles. I'd wait just patiently for the mail every day to get the paper, see if I got it right. and I'd count to 10 for people in Latin. And,
How do you remember it? Do you remember how to say it?
oh, yes. Unus duo tres quador quinque sex septimox tono vindicum.
Oh my goodness.
That's there's a fella came down to the dining room to his daughter that was eating by me, and he takes a big part in the church here, and I told him, I said, well, I'm a long-time Baptist, and I was baptized in the Gasconade River. I said, you didn't have baptistry then.
You got baptized? You got baptized?
Yeah.
In the Gasconade?
Yeah, she joined the same church, but she also taught school down at Dixon, and she went to church down there some. And that's where my oldest brother met his wife. And,
Roger?
Yeah, Roger. That's where he met his wife in Dixon. And years later, I just had Mayfield to drive me down there across the river from where he lived. And when my Lola came here a few days ago, and she went back and she called me back and put my brother on the phone, and he says, Berin Church, and I couldn't tell much of what he said, but I understood him say, Berin Church. I said, yes, that was our home church, and you preached there. And he seemed like he remembered that.
Nice.
But I would go to see him in the nursing home, and he would just, his eyes would fall on my purse, because I always had a banana in there for him. And I'd say, tell me my name, and I'll give you this banana. He'd say, Ethel.
Ethel.
And he never would say Anna's name or any of them. He'd just say Ethel.
And then he would get a banana? And then he would get a banana? He would get a banana?
Yeah, I'd give him a banana. And also, there's one of our cousins that was in there at the same time, so I'd go to see him, take him a banana. He'd say, oh, monkey food. I didn't realize when I went to see people in the nursing home what it meant, for a visit. It just means so much, for somebody to come to see you. It just seemed like it just gives you a different atmosphere. But my very best friend, she was just like a sister to me.
Who was that?
Virginia Wooding. And she went to Hazel Green to the Methodist Church, and I went to Independence to the Baptist Church. But we would teach school together, and we would take extension classes from the college together, and if I'd get sick, she'd be the first one to bring me some food. And so I got a card from her sister-in-law today.
Oh.
And I got a card from a bunch of girls called the Nichols girls. Oh, there was a bunch of them, and they all went to school to us. I got a card from the Lakeway School.
Oh, that's special.
And it said all the staff and everybody here wishes you a happy 100th birthday.
Oh. You had mentioned something about when Randy was a little baby. When Randy was a little baby, it was scary. Something happened.
And the what?
He got sick.
Oh,
Randy,
yes, he had that ruptured appendix, but it was just like an abscess over the appendix, and they couldn't operate, and they called Dr. Padilla, a specialist from St. Louis, and they gave him shots to gather that infection, and it would gather, he said it would gather right around that appendix, and then when they'd given him so many shots he couldn't have anything to eat, and he'd just see him coming, and he'd just turn over so he'd be ready for give him that shot, and they were so amazed at that. And he says he remembers some of that. And after they gave him a number of shots, quite a few. I don't remember how many, but it took a good while. They just put that needle in and
into his leg.
That medicine till it got the size of a baseball. We had to watch it, and when it got the size of a baseball, well, we had to call them. They'd shut it off. That was the only way they could give him anything. And he just begged me to. He'd say, "Mom, go and get me some of that water. It's under the front seat, you know," he'd say. And I never left him. I stayed right with him.
They wouldn't let him drink water?
No, they wouldn't let him have anything. And the Dr. Padilla said, when we finish these shots, they will gather that infection all around that appendix, and he said, "I'll give him an enema with sweet milk and molasses." And then he did. And so then he said, now he can eat a little bit of anything he wants. Oh, I tell you, he was so thirsty and hungry. He wanted a hamburger and fries, of course, and some kind of a drink. I don't know what we had then. And that Dr. Padilla said, this may never bother him again, but it might. But it didn't. It never bothered him again.
That's happy news.
And yeah. But I really did admire Dr. Padilla, but Dr. Busick was a child specialist, but he wanted to operate, and Dr. Padilla said, if you want to kill him, you just operate. Said, you cannot operate, you'll scatter that. And he said, we have to gather it all together around that, just like an abscess. And Randy says he can remember some of that. And of course, I'd never leave him, and my folks would come to see me, some of them, and like Anna and Lloyd, they'd come to see me, and they'd all say, you look worse than he does.
Oh.
But oh, it was a trying time. But I was so happy to see him when they came by the other day, because I didn't expect them. I knew that they had to go to Springfield with my daughter lost some arms, and so I said, what kind of report did you get? And she said, I just got shots in my hand. And so I was in the bathroom, and Randy came right in there and got me. And oh, I tell you, when he'd say, Mom, it just thrilled my soul.
No.
Because whenever we got him, some of my folks said, well, I'm going to try to find out about his ancestors. And I said, well, I don't think I want to try to find out anything. They said, well, we might need it for medical reasons, you know, if you inherit something. So they found out a little bit about him, I think, but he said, no, I don't want to know anything because this is the only mother I ever knew. And when he'd say, Mom, oh, I tell you, it just thrilled my soul.
No. What did Mayfield do? Was he a teacher or an administrator?
Well, no, Mayfield was still living. But, you know, he never would hardly stay with Mayfield. If I'd get ready to go to town or anything, he could sense it and he would want to go right with me. And he wouldn't want to go with Mayfield, but he'd want to go with me. But after he got bigger, Mayfield would criticize him about his decisions sometimes, and oh, that just killed him. And I was always careful how I'd say anything, you know, instead of criticizing him just flat out. I'd go around the bush, kind of. And then, but he didn't want to know anybody but his mother, that was me, and he didn't want me to send money to them, and because I'd send it for the church and I'd send mine, he'd say, don't send them any money. He said, they'll just waste it, but I don't think they would, but every year they'd make a drive for school clothes, and I'd send them a little money, and the church would. I'd send it for the church.
How long did you play the piano or organ in church?
Huh?
How long did you play the music at church?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. The girl that was really qualified wasn't there much of the time. There wouldn't be anybody to play, and so they found out I could play, and so I'd said, well, I'll do the best I can. And I several years, but I don't know, I didn't keep track of the years like Grace did. She's been there 12 years or more, I believe. And she really, she had two husbands that were preachers, and Paul says, I bet she was a good preacher's wife, and I said, I imagine she was. She knows the scripture pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Did you play until you were 90 or your 80s?
Yeah.
Were you in your 80s or 90 when you were still playing?
Oh yeah, I can play now if my hands are not too stiff. But I didn't have a piano at home after the house blew away, and it blew away our piano. But you know, we didn't know it for a long time, but when my mother was young, she played the organ, and we never did know that.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either till later in years. She played the organ.
Did you ever hear her?
I imagine she played by ear. I don't imagine she knew one note from another. But, you know, I told you David plays for 3 churches, and he never had any music training, but his mother was a trained musician, and she told me that he could tell her things. one time Grace and I were talking about what key, something about what key, some certain key. And all we had to do was ask David, but he just knew it, you know.
Yeah.
He's by that like I was by the bread I'd make, the cottage cheese I'd make. People would say I'd bake big long roasters full of loaves of bread. And when anybody'd move into the community, I'd take a loaf of bread. Oh, they just enjoyed that homemade bread, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody knew how to make cottage cheese, but I don't know how I learned. Nobody showed me, but I just seemed like I just understood how you had to do to, and nobody else made cottage cheese. And I made all the cottage cheese and we ate it. We had some little turkeys and we fed the little turkeys cottage cheese sometimes because they would eat that, they couldn't eat grain. But we'd raise a few turkeys.
Did you make angel food?
No, I didn't make that. I wasn't good at making cakes, but my older sister was. And she'd know if the cake failed, she'd know what happened. I didn't fool with cakes. I just liked to make some bread, and I would make pies occasionally, but I all couldn't understand how I got my cards and they didn't get the paper in the mail. So later they brought me the paper.
So you 44 cards so far, and that's not counting tomorrow's birthday
I was
party.
going to ask you, when your grandmother had her party, what did they do?
We actually connected computers. We connected one computer here so you could look down and see her down in Florida.
Yeah.
And we had some people from here that came and visited, Beverly and Laura. I think someone else was going to visit, but there was such a bad snowstorm that the truck was sliding off the road or something. So maybe it was Brenda, I'm not sure, but it was really cold here then.
Well, I remember Laura got to go, and I don't know who it was went with her, but
I think Beverly, no.
Laura, and it seemed like it might have been some of Jesse's, my brother's family.
No, Liz wasn't able to make it because she had to take care of some new calves, I think.
Well, I know Laura went, and I always wondered, Bonnie and I wish we could have gone. We went to several things together.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's right. We also we had a computer with Aunt Bonnie, so she also could watch.
When we went to see her get her doctor's degree, they served
And here's
lasagna.
there's
and
the
I've
picture.
never had any of that before. That was my first time to eat any lasagna, but I never liked it.
Yep, there's your sister Flora when she got her PhD at Madison Square Gardens. She was the class representative to go up on stage in the big Madison Square Gardens.
Mayfield, when we went to see your grandma and grandpa, and they lived in New York there, and so your grandpa liked his steak rare, and she prepared the meal, and Randy had one of his friends with him, and he wasn't used to rare meat, and he couldn't get it cut up. Mayfield got tickled, and he just laughed whether anybody liked it or not, and your grandpa got up and left the table. He just couldn't take anything like that.
Now you had a party here on your birthday, right? There was a part, you had some cake on your birthday Tuesday?
Me?
Yeah.
Uh,
Liz came by?
oh, yes, Liz and one of Jim's relatives. And she brought me the roses and a cake. And she said I was going to make one, but I decided I'd just buy one.
Yeah, and you...
But it said 100 on it, and then she had, she said each candle represents a decade, so she had 10 candles. And so I had, and she said, blow them out. And I said, well, I don't know if I can or not, but
well, you've had plenty of practice.
I said, I've got to count to 10 in Latin. I don't know if I'll have enough wind.